Hello, and welcome to this edition of People in Transition. I'm your host, Bob Durst. I've been hiring, firing, and mentoring executives, frontline employees, interns, and job seekers in companies around the world through a host of transitions, some difficult, but most very good. I work with people in Hong Kong, India, Australia, and across the United States. What sets them apart? A lot, but there's more they have in common. And one of those commonalities is transition is a part of life. This experience has given me a bird's eye view on a variety of trends, economies, industry disruptors, and transitions that are big and small. It also brought me into contact with the thought leaders and decision makers you need to meet, the people who can make the difference that matters to you right now. Imagine knowing exactly what to do next and how to know it's time to make your big change. The insight track you're going to access during our future episodes is better than a crystal ball. It's the exact information you need to take that next step. Whether you're a new grad applying for your first professional job, someone looking to transition your work experience into a promotion, launching your own company, or maybe even starting to plan your retirement, you're in transition, and this series is for you. We all know transition can be scary, but it doesn't have to be. And it's even fun when you have VIP access to the future you want. Are you tired of the uncertainty of being passed up? We'll share with you the tools and skills that can take your dreams to the front of the line. So, if change is on your horizon, or maybe just the thought of change, you won't want to miss this discussion. It could be the exact edge you need to turn transition into an amazing opportunity.
Adrian Choo, I am so excited about having you on today. You're calling in all the way from Singapore. You have such a broad base of experiences and expertise. I'm so looking forward to this.
Me too, Bob. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm very happy to be able to share my ideas and concepts with you with regards to career transitions.
Adrian, when you think back, when you were a little one, what was it that you wanted to be when you grew up?
Well, when I was a little one, I had lots of fantasy jobs. I wanted to be a doctor, I wanted to be a lawyer, even a fireman. But the thing that I really wanted to do was to study medicine, to go into the medical field. But one thing I realized was that as I grew older, I didn't like blood and guts. And that was, as I understand it, a prerequisite for the job. So I was quite confused. But when I was 19, I watched a very interesting movie called Wall Street. And when I saw Gordon Gekko going up on the stand and shouting, "Greed is good," and I got introduced into the world of finance. And that's why I decided to go into business. And that's when I pivoted away from a pre-medical background into the world of business, and I went to business school.
Were there any other transition moments, Adrian, that you experienced to get you from that picture of yourself as a child to where you're at today?
Well, one of the biggest pivot points for me was when I decided to move away from headhunting, which I had about more than a decade of experience in, into the world of career coaching and career strategy consulting. And that was one of my biggest inflection points, because at that point in time, it was not a very well-established practice over in Singapore especially. But back in 2015, I decided to do that pivot, and it was exciting all the way, even until now.
Adrian, you have a book called Career Crossroads, or one of your books, I should say. What's it about, and what would one of my listeners learn from it if they read it?
Well, it was a book which I wrote back in 2015. It talks about having a career strategy when you're at a career crossroads, or even before you have a career crossroad. It speaks to having a plan so that when something happens, when there is a trigger or when there is an event that could negatively or even positively affect your career, you would have been prepared. So it speaks about more about career health and career readiness and being career agile, rather than waiting for a negative event to happen, followed by you running about trying to figure out what to do next.
Adrian, you talk about target fixation and that you need to have a long-term focus. What's that all about?
Well, if we look at it, our career is a very long-term game. In fact, I would even call it like what Simon Sinek says, an infinite game that goes on for a very, very long time until the day you want to retire. Even if you are 40, if you look at it, you're still only halfway through because the retirement age now in most countries is about 60s or even the late 60s. So you have a good 20, 25 years left to go. And if you don't have a strategy or you don't have a plan, you're not going to be able to maximize your opportunities. And if you're not careful, you might even end up being unemployable if your skills aren't up to date, or if you're not in the right industry that's growing fast enough, or worse still, if you're in a sunset industry that's going to disappear off the face of the earth in a couple of years. So you need to have that strategy and fix your vision on what you really want to achieve and head towards it.
Adrian, how do you develop that career strategy? Any tips, techniques that you'd give my listeners?
The career strategy consists of several components, Bob. One of the things that you need to know is what exactly makes you happy, what exactly your skills are, where is the market coming from for the skills that you have, and how do you become even more skilled at what you do, so much so that you create a demand for your capabilities. And that takes a lot of thinking, that takes a lot of self-reflection, and that also takes a lot of market research to see where your strengths are and how much the market really wants. For instance, if you're a statistician and you've always looked at your job as being a statistician, crunching numbers, and you're very analytical, the future is not really meant for statisticians because that's not what the new job titles are. Right now, it's called data analytics. And that is the field that's growing fast. And, it's still the same thing at the core, but data analytics harnesses a lot of technology. It harnesses a lot of consumer insights and how do you process it. So you need to know what the market demand is. And if you have the skills, how then do you augment the latest requirements from the market to yourself? And therefore, you can map yourself onto the demand that's coming up more accurately and hence ensuring that you become more employable.
Should you develop this career strategy alone, or you get a coach or a friend or a spouse? Is it a group effort?
Well, Bob, it's okay to start off on your own first to have a look at, what exactly you're looking at, where exactly you want to go. But a lot of times there are blind spots, and that's where coaches come in. And sometimes your coach is there also to inject some reality into your plans, into your dreams, into your vision. So, for instance, one of the things which I personally have to contend with whenever I talk to our clients is certain degree of confusion when I ask them, what do you want to do next? And they start telling me things like, I want to open up a farm. I want to start a hipster cafe. Or, I want to start a kindergarten for special kids. And we tell them, look, that is not a dream job. That's a fantasy job, because in all likelihood, you're not going to be able to do it in the next year or two because you're not prepared enough. If you go out chasing your fantasy job, you will be disappointed because it's exactly what it says. It's a fantasy job. However, a dream job would be like, I want to join this company A. I want to join Google as their marketing director for this certain territory. And because I have these skills, they would want to hire me. A good, strong coach is able to help you distinguish between a dream job and a fantasy job to make sure that you don't go chasing around down the wrong rabbit hole.
Yeah, I can so relate to that. I wanted to open up a Starbucks till I saw what the franchise cost was. That's a fantasy plus lottery winning. So
yeah, and after you open one up, down the road another one pops up again. So
yeah, 2 blocks away.
Good luck.
Right. Yeah. Adrian, I want to kind of move into talking about networking a little bit, and I've found that many networking meetings to be too long and too unfocused. What are your thoughts on networking meetings?
I actually frown upon formal networking meetings because it's so artificial, as you know. It's plastic, and a lot of times it just feels fake. So I would actually say, these network meetings are great to attend, but don't take them too seriously. I think what's better is if you have your own outreach through people that you already know or people that you want to know via LinkedIn. You can just send them a message and say, hey, I was wondering if I could get some advice from you and whether or not it's possible for us to catch up for a coffee or maybe even a quick Zoom session. So I think the best forms of outreach are those that are genuine. And you're right, sometimes the network meetings do get a bit too long. They're great to attend, especially if it's a trade show where you have a huge gathering of people who are having similar industry backgrounds as you. That would be nice to just collect name cards and arrange a meeting with them after the event rather than at the event itself.
You've talked to me before about the 5 resume turnoffs. What are they and why are they a problem?
Being a very experienced headhunter, we only have about 15 seconds for you to get my attention, for me to flip the page and see whether or not we want to meet you. So one of the biggest turnoffs for me personally is if the CV is too long. And by that, I mean it's more than 3 pages. I've seen CVs that are like 9 pages long, especially from engineers who want to put in all their projects and all the details in, which is nice. If you want to edit as an appendix, it's fine. But I wouldn't have the time to flip through and to peruse all 9 pages. So number one, if it's too long, it's going to make me wary and I can't get the details all in. The second thing is CVs, they are not updated. When I see your last job, it's something that it doesn't tie up with where you are right now. So when that happens, I wonder, what's this person been up to in recent times? Which means that it's not updated. And one thing personally for me is, and I know it sounds a bit unfair, is bad English. When I see very clear grammatical errors, especially if the job requires very strong English. For instance, if you're in corporate communications, if you are in a medical or very strong English is required, that might be a big turnoff as well. Because even if you're not strong in your English, the least you can do is to do a spell check or grammar check. Because to me, when I see something with a CV with bad English or bad spelling or wrong spelling, I'm thinking this person did not bother enough to get someone to check. And for me, it speaks to poor attention to details. And of course, whenever I see gaps or very clear untruths in the CV, and being a seasoned headhunter, we are able to spot that out right off the bat. So these are some of the things that really bug me when I look at a CV.
Adrian, what do you think the job is of a job applicant? How would you describe it?
Well, if a person has been retrenched and does not have a full-time job on hand, looking for a job is his job. He should be spending the morning, at least, reading up news, going up on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is such a powerful tool for the job seeker. You should be on there looking for jobs, looking for people to connect to who could possibly lend you jobs or who could possibly give you good advice or good leads. The job of the job seeker is to connect to as many people in your field as possible to start having those conversations going. And these aren't, please, sir, can you give me a job conversations, but just reaching out and connecting and trying to find out what's going on in that space. Is there an opportunity for me to lend my services into that space? And that's something which, if you're a job seeker, that should be one of your core and primary activities, especially in the morning. And I know it gets fatiguing, it gets very tiring for you to be going to job search mode all day long, right? So what we recommend to our clients is, get it over and done with by the morning. By 11 o'clock, if you've sent out all your emails, you've met all the people that you wanted to meet or set up all the meetings, then have the rest of the day off. Just do your own stuff. But be focused, be disciplined in terms of your outreach, in terms of understanding the market and gathering data. And I'm very confident you should be landing a job within the next 3 to 4 months at the latest.
You're right. You have to have balance, though, in your life. You have to take care of yourself physically, emotionally. I'd agree. Mm-hmm. Adrian, why does going to the company's website make sense for the candidate to do before they do their interview?
Wow, that's a great question, Bob. I think it speaks to you having shown and displayed interest in the organization's latest news, and it's very impressive if you're able to go through, especially the annual reports, and you're able to speak about, hey, I was very impressed by company's performance last quarter. It was up 42% year on year, and I think there's very strong growth trends. And you can also talk about the industries, their competitors in the industry, and you can also talk about market conditions. You can also talk about the latest staff movements. If they've hired someone from another company or someone else got promoted, it impresses the interviewer and it will set you apart from the other interviewees. And I can tell you that for me, it's really impressive because it shows that the candidate has bothered to do the extra research, and therefore it shows that he's interested in joining my team.
Adrian, how do you coach your people preparing to answer the questions that they might be asked during the interview?
There are some common questions that would usually be asked. I mean, the 3 common questions fall under a broad category of questions, fall under 3 themes. The first one is basically, who are you? You have to introduce yourself to me. And that's where you have to fine-tune your pitch. In fact, your elevator pitch. Who you are, what you've done, what you have achieved. And hopefully that pitch is highly relevant to what they're looking for, and also concise enough for them to be able to get a handle on you so that they know who you are. The second question at the interview you need to answer is about, why should I hire this guy? Or why should I hire this lady? Because it's all about value proposition. Are you experienced in the space which I have this problem I need solved? Do you have the right credentials? Have you achieved similar challenges with great results, the same type of challenges which I'm facing right now? So the first question being, who are you? The second question being, why should I hire this person? Biggest question on every interviewer's mind is, will this person fit in to the team? Will he succeed? Will he stay? And is there a good culture fit? There are always questions surrounding these three themes. And if you prepare well around these three themes, you'll be fine.
And how can I, as a candidate, find out in advance of the interview more about if I am a good culture fit? Maybe I'm looking for a more hard charge and entrepreneurial environment, or maybe I'm looking for a more family, laid back, slower. How can I get that information?
If you have a headhunter who is facilitating the deal, then he'll be a great go-to guy to get your answers from. But if you don't, then what might be good is if you have friends of friends who might know someone in the company, and you can get a pulse check or a dipstick reading whether or not that's the kind of culture that you want to be, whether or not you would enjoy being in that organization. But a lot of times, you can probably get a feel of it when you are interviewing with the hiring manager or the people in the organization. So whenever you go for a job interview, it's not just a one-way street. It's about, even as they are assessing you, you are also assessing them. Will there be a good fit? Will I enjoy myself here? Quick story. I had a client once who was called up by a startup, a technology startup, and he was asked to come down for the interview because the CEO wanted to meet him. And the interview was arranged to be for a Sunday afternoon at 3 p.m. at their office. And warning bells set off with my client, and he said, "Oh wow, that's a strange timing indeed." But I said to him, let's go anyway. He went there, he attended the meeting, and what was fascinating for him was when he stepped into the office, he saw it was full. Everyone was there working on a Sunday afternoon. And his warning bell started going off. And he said, after several discussions, after about half an hour of discussion with the CEO did confirm that, yeah, they work very late days, they work on weekends, there's almost no family life. So upon hearing it, my client actually said, with all due respect, I don't quite think there's going to be a good fit here. And he politely declined interviewing further. So going down and having discussions and interactions with the interviewers and the business leaders would give you a very good idea about what the culture is like and whether or not you would enjoy yourself being there.
Adrian, what are the most common mistakes you've seen candidates make in their answering the interview questions?
I think just be authentic, be yourself, and trying too hard to fit into the mold which the hiring manager is looking for. And that generally doesn't work out well. For instance, if they're looking for a salesperson, and if you apply for the role, and say even if you've done sales before, maybe the role is looking for a hunter, someone who's doing a lot of cold calls, making 50 cold calls a day, talking to strangers. That's pretty harsh numbers. And you might be in sales, but your sales could be in the form of account management where you farm the accounts rather than hunt for new ones. And if you really are very, very keen to join a company and you fudge your credentials, or you tell them that, no, I've done cold calls before, and then you might end up having the job, but not enjoying yourself on the job. So one of the things we always say is be authentic, be yourself. If the role doesn't fit you, it's not a bad thing. It just means that you're not meant to be in that role. So just move on to the next opportunity which has a better fit.
Since you were a search person for many years, what's the relationship between a candidate and the search person? And is that a relationship that candidates should try to build to help them in their job search?
It's always good to be friends with the search professional, with the search executive. We must always bear in mind that the headhunter doesn't work for us. The headhunter does not work for the candidate. The headhunter works for the client. And as a result, you need to know that he can be there for you, but only for as long as you are of value to him. So take whatever he says with a pinch of salt, but it's always good to have a positive relationship with your headhunter, not so much in terms of landing the job, but they are a great source of market data in terms of salaries, in terms of who's hiring, in terms of what are the latest skills his clients are looking for, which you may have or you may want to acquire. So as a source of information, the headhunter is fantastic. And on that note, and most headhunters are nice guys anyway, so you would want to develop a relationship with them, but not so much just for the sole purpose of landing a job.
And should you just pick up the telephone book and start calling executive search? What should you do?
That could work, but oftentimes the results would be dismal. I would say that at least know the headhunter. Headhunters have their own areas of specialization. So it's no point if I'm a pharmaceutical guy, if I'm a pharma guy, and I go call up the headhunter who's in charge of banking. He can't help me because he has zero knowledge of my domain. So it'll be useful if you connected to the right headhunters, the right type of headhunters. But headhunters are just one of the many avenues that you can deploy to land a job. I always believe in going straight to the source. So if you are already in a company or in an industry, who are your competitors? Who are the people who may not be your competitors, but could be your suppliers, could be your vendors? Reach out to them and let them know that you are available. Then that's assuming you're out of a job already. And then let them know you're available and open yourself to discussions with them. And I always find for my clients that these are the best options. And there are processes and there are methodologies as to what goes on in those discussions or even in the first outreach. But we've always found that definitely more effective and more proactive than waiting for headhunters to call you up, or you calling up random headhunters may not be too keen to be speaking to you in the first place.
Adrian, I've heard before that someone that's looking for a job should establish a calendar, a schedule for themselves. Many of them are used to working a schedule prior to maybe being off their job. If you were coaching your clients, one, do you think that they should establish that schedule? And two, how in a typical week, and I have air quotes around typical, how would you suggest they spend their time?
Earlier on in the podcast, I mentioned that you should be looking for a job should be your job if you are an active job hunter. But I would like our listeners to have a shift of thinking as well, that this is a good time for you to be doing the things that you've always wanted to do but never had the time for. For instance, that project in your backyard that you've always wanted to do, or that new hobby which you always wanted to take up, or even spending time with the kids, or just going for walks in the afternoon with your wife or in the evening, or even just learning a new skill like unicycling, or rollerblading or something like that. It's enriching, especially if you do it with people that matter to you. So don't be too overly focused on just landing the job, because I can tell you one thing: if you're in a job hunting mode and if you fret and worry so much every day just whether you're going to land a job, and you will land a job sooner or later, when you do end up in a job, you're going to look back and go, wow, I miss those afternoon naps. Wow, I miss those morning walks with my wife. And spend time, enjoy your break while you have it, because when you land a job, you're not going to have as much free time as you do now. So enjoy it while it lasts. So don't be too overly focused just on the job search. Other things more important to you in your life.
Adrian, I've heard before that the interviewer or the hiring manager might be as nervous as the candidate during that interview. What's your experience with that? And is there something that the candidate should do to help allay those nervousness of the hiring person?
Well, Bob, most of the time, the hiring manager has a problem which he needs fixed by the successful candidate coming in. And oftentimes, it's a high risk. Every hire is a risk. So he wants to make sure that he's got the right person on board. So every hire is a risk to the hiring manager. For instance, what if I hired someone who's a wrong fit? What if I hired someone who cannot perform? It's going to look really bad on me. And more importantly, it might set my business back by 6 months even. By the time I figure out he's not the right fit and I fire him and I need to look for someone else, it could set my targets back by half a year. So that's why a lot of hiring managers do tend to get a bit nervous when they are looking for talent and when they are in the interview process. So as a candidate, my suggestion is to get all your points ready in terms of your capabilities. Get prepared for the type of questions they have and answer very, very thoroughly to the point, authentically honestly. And if it's something that you don't have experience in, don't fudge it. Don't say that I've done this before when you haven't, because the worst case scenario is you do get the job and suddenly now you're asked to fly the plane and you're like, oh, okay, you didn't mention it was a commercial aircraft. I thought you were talking about remote control planes. Okay, then you're in trouble. So go prepared, be honest, be authentic.
Adrian, any coaching for candidates that bring notes to the interview and or take notes of what the hiring manager is talking about during that interview?
Oh, in fact, Bob, that's a fantastic idea. We always tell our candidates to ask for permission and whip out the notebook and start taking notes when the interviewer is talking, especially when he's talking about the business, because it shows that you are keen on what he says. And it's quite flattering when someone actually bothers enough about what I'm saying that he's actually taking notes. So it's a good sign, it's a good, healthy sign. But don't bring notes into the interview, because it shows that you're nervous and you're unprepared. I wouldn't even recommend bringing PowerPoint slides or stuff that you've prepared for the interview and to show them, because unless it's maybe the third or fourth interview where there's a certain relationship being formed. But even then, don't go in with notes or with a slide deck or with printouts. Just have a discussion to make sure that the person you're interviewing likes you. It looks like the start of a very promising relationship. So go in, as I said, be authentic and be yourself.
Adrian, why don't candidates hear back from companies after they've interviewed with them?
I know, it's so frustrating, isn't it? I personally feel that if you, as the hiring manager or as the hiring organization, have interviewed an individual and have used up the individual's time, it's only courteous, polite, and respectful for that company to say, thanks for your time. I'm afraid it didn't work out because A, B, and C. But, let me keep your information on hand. If something interesting comes up, I will definitely let you know. How much time does that take, right? But a lot of times, companies don't do that. And the reason why they don't do that is because they are swamped with so many requests, so many interviewees, and the sheer volume of it makes it difficult. But nonetheless, I always believe that it should be a practice, and companies that do practice that end up having better employer reputation and employer branding. And I think it's a lot easier to look for talent down the road if companies did something as simple as that. But it's the rare company that does that.
Adrian, should a candidate ask about the timeline for the company, the hiring manager, to make a decision? And is there anything that they can do to help expedite that decision?
I think the candidates should be asking for the timeline, as in what's next? What should I expect next? Is there another interview? Is there another round of interviews? How many more interviews are there to go? And it's not an unfair question to ask. I think in terms of a timeline, because sometimes you do have 2 or 3 other jobs in the pipeline. In fact, if you have 1 or 2 that are really progressing very well, and if the interview you're attending is with a company you also want to join, it's also okay to let them know where you are with your conversations with the other companies. Like, oh, I'm actually in final stages with another company, and an offer might be out within the next 2 weeks. So you might want to inform them that you have another interview in the pipeline that's progressing really, really well, to the point where you can tell the interviewer that, hey, I'm in the final stages of another interview, and an offer should be out in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Therefore, if you would like to expedite it, that might be a good idea, because I really want to work with your company. So on one hand, you're informing them about your other opportunity and you're kind of pushing their schedule a little. But on the other hand, you're also being fair to them by giving them some heads up as to whether or not you would be a viable candidate. Because if the process is going to take 3 months, then they know not to progress with you anymore.
Adrian, are there any books or other resources that you would recommend to our listeners that might be going through their own personal transition?
Well, that's a great question, Bob. There are lots of good materials and information out there available on the internet, especially on YouTube, which you can check it out. But if you're looking for some ideas, you could log on LinkedIn. Lots of good articles are there. And if you check out my channel on LinkedIn, which is my personal page on LinkedIn, Adrian Choo, The Career Strategist, I, along with my partner, we run weekly talks on various matters with regards to career issues, with regards to job hunting on LinkedIn Live. We have a video series over there as well. So if you want to, you just hop on. Lots of good materials there for you to have a view.
Adrian, we went through really a great deal of information today. If you were to make certain that our listeners take away and remember only 3 things, what are the 3 things that they should remember in their own job search?
Well, the best time to grow a tree is not today, but 5 years ago. So the best time to go job hunting is not when you're out of a job, but to be when you're in a job. Or if you've just caught wind that there's going to be some changes up ahead in the organization, maybe it could be some layoffs, then you might want to get into job search mode right away to give yourself as much lead time as possible and give some heads up to the people that you possibly want to work with. So prepare way beforehand. Don't wait till the last minute when the X drops and then you start looking around for options. The second thing is you need to know your market as well. Who exactly are the companies that would find value in the skills that you have? They would find your experience and expertise relevant. Reach out to these people, not in terms of looking for jobs, but just being on their radar. Even if it's via LinkedIn or through trade shows, just make sure that they know you and you have an ongoing relationship with them. This could take the form of your competitors, your suppliers, your vendors, your partners, even your ex-bosses as well. Stay in the market, and which leads on to my third point, which is network. It's not so much about who you know, but who knows you and what are you known for. So what's really important is for you to be able to go into the market, let them know who you are, and if you're in job search mode, the best leads come from people who already know you and who already trust you. So work your leads thoroughly, generate new leads via networking, and keep staying in the market because you're not going to get very much traction hiding in your room and hoping for opportunities to come look for you. You have to be proactive and you need to go out there and make things happen.
Adrian Choo, I know that your network sees you as someone that will help them land better jobs, that gives great career advice, that understands the job hunting techniques, and is just a giving person. Adrian, thank you so much for your time today.
Pleasure's all mine, Bob. Hope to catch up with you sometime soon.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. We're working in unprecedented times as the world responds to the recent COVID-19 crisis. The fact is that even those who are not in transition understand it could be right around the corner, next month or a year from now. The purpose of these episodes are to give listeners support and the critical tools to adjust with the winds, wherever they come. I'll continue to introduce you to guests who have successfully, perhaps gracefully or without too many battle scars, survived their own obstacle courses, and can share useful information on how to steady your ship or your world in this uncertainty. If today's message was helpful to you, please share it on social media. If you have any questions or podcast ideas for future conversations, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I appreciate your time you're investing in sharing these important conversations with me, my guests, and others who are going through life transition. Transitions between jobs, life stages, new entrepreneurial ventures, or whatever life brings. Change is constant. The more prepared you are for it, the better and easier the change will occur. Thank you again. This is your host, Bob Gerst. See you at our next episode of People in Transition.